Well, welcome to our last panel of the day for Sinister Halloween Con. It is the very last panel for Sinister Halloween Con for 2023.
There are so many more people that we thought were going to be here.
I know. The over-under was 0, so yeah.
You won.
We won.
Billy's perfect turnout.
Don't interrupt, Sandra. Come on.
Anyway, that doesn't change the fact that we're going to talk about haunted houses. We're going to talk about the Higbee Haunted House, one of the most popular venues during Halloween in Stanislaus County. And we're going to talk in general about some of the haunts that are what I call theme park haunts. Would that be correct, guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to talk about that too, and actually have two people that are experts in the art of haunting and the art of setting up a haunt. I do want to say first of all that scaring each other is in everybody's DNA, and whether you enjoy horror films or Halloween, everybody has scared somebody purposely at some point in their lives. I can imagine early humans sitting around a campfire and telling scary stories or grunting scary stories about danger outside the cave. And I believe, the first haunted house was probably a cave. A haunted cave, right? Yeah, don't go into that cave, it's haunted.
Some of those cave drawings with them doing the hunts and things,
That's
that was
true.
supposed to teach them the fear of what animals could kill them.
True. And can you imagine some cave dweller sneaking up behind another cave dweller and growling?
Oh, yeah.
And grabbing him by the shoulder or
About
something.
haunted scenes.
Skinning a
So,
saber-toothed tiger and wearing
yeah.
that around the cave.
But what's the first game that you teach a baby? What's the, no,
Oh, tag?
no.
Peekaboo.
Peek-a-boo,
Peekaboo.
right? Peekaboo.
Stops kids from thinking you exist.
You're really scaring.
No.
No,
They-
you're getting a reaction, a visceral reaction
The
from them.
mental capacity of a baby literally thinks you have vanished when you cover their eyes. And so it's frightening because it's suddenly you've given them a jump scare by appearing out of nowhere.
That is good.
By peekaboo. I love
That is
it.
good, I like it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, it's something that, as I said before, it's part of all of us, okay? So today we have John Scott, who is the creative director behind the Higbee Horror Haunt, which is usually located in Modesto,
Yes.
and has been for the last 15 years. And yeah, it's a long time. It's got quite a reputation throughout the state as one of the best local haunts around. And then we have Jaye Vocque.
Oh, you pronounced it right.
Yes. Yeah, it's not like the other name. And Jaye is an actor. He's a gifted actor. He's a playwright. But in his acting experience, he's also been a performer who's worked at Hollywood Horror Nights in Florida. He has been at Sinister Creature Con for many years. And he is a person who is just well versed in all aspects of haunts and haunting and makeup and just about any topic that you can think of that deals with something horrific. Sorry about that, Jay. That doesn't sound that great. But
That's
you know
my
what
intro?
I mean. You know what I mean, Jay. He's the only person I know who's played Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors. Not
Audrey
once,
too,
but
right?
twice. So that kind of gives you an idea of what Jay's experience is. How did each one of you become interested in frightening people or in the aspects of the scary things of Halloween? I mean, what prompted you? Has this been something that you've always done? Or was it part of your growing up? Were you influenced by parents, by other people, or was it just kind of a natural inclination? John, we'll start with you.
I think a lot of it is from you getting scared. Because I mean, you grow up watching horror movies and scary movies, you get that scare, that adrenaline rush. And once you start in like my realm of designing and creating these haunted houses, you kind of flip the script and you're doing the scaring. And it was completely different, and it was something to where it was like, I mean, yeah, normally you scare people around the house, you know, for fun. But the fun of scaring people in that realm was just, you know, a different level. And it was just so much fun.
And you started as just like a home haunt, right?
Yeah, we started out in the backyard, and but I mean, even before then, you know, everyone kind of would start out decorating their homes, and I mean, that's what we did. We started out decorating as Nightmare Before Christmas and stuff like that, but then eventually we hit the point where, you know, we threw up some black plastic and tarps in the backyard,
And had people go through a little.
yeah, we just did something quick for Halloween night, and then before you know it, we were setting up, you know, 2x4 framed walls and adding more props and just kind of getting more intricate with the quality and building it up to what it is now.
And you had a lot of support from your folks, right?
Oh yeah,
In terms
absolutely.
of that,
I mean,
they enjoyed doing it too.
Yeah, it started out on my dad's property in his backyard.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
So-
right. Jay, how about you? How did you?
I gotta either give credit to or blame my older brother. My older brother was really into horror films. He started me out watching horror films in the correct order. Like I started with Universal Monsters.
Mhm.
I moved on through the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. So by the time my age, by the time I'm hitting contemporary films in the 80s, I've just had a 4-year history of horror with my brother. And along with that, he loved finding what made me jump in the movie and then finding the best way to recreate that same exact fear in me the second the movie was over. I remember vividly the first time I ever did anything that would be considered a haunt. I grew up on a farm way out in the middle of nowhere. Our nearest neighbor was 1.5 miles away, so
Oh my
it
gosh.
wasn't like we were gonna ever decorate the outside of our home.
Right.
So nobody had ever seen the outside of my home. And my brother just had this brilliant idea that since the horses were gone, we could take the stables and that whole area and turn it into a giant haunted house. And I didn't even think in my head, yeah, that's a stupid idea. Nobody would ever see it. My brain was automatically, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I was rushed to the hospital that evening because after we built everything we could in this haunted house, he comes up with this idea. And that was, you guys know what a horse trough is, correct?
Of course.
Exact length of my body at the time. So I'm supposed to lay in the horse trough, of which my brother was smart enough to give me a straw. And then he filled the horse trough with water, threw on a couple of spoonfuls of manure to make it murky water, and then left me there to take photos of me jumping out at whoever would come by. Did you remember I lived 1.5 miles away from my nearest neighbor? Nobody fucking came by, ever, and at some point, some of the manure got in the straw, and I couldn't breathe anymore.
Oh my God.
But I didn't want to spoil the scare and not jump out, so I stayed there under the fucking water, and I gave my passed out and floated to the surface, and my brother freaked out and ran to mom and dad and lied, said I don't know what Jay was doing.
That is the saddest.
It was
Halloween
him.
story
I
I've
gotta
ever
believe
heard.
him.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's no wonder you became an actor. I'll tell you.
What I won't do for a role.
How much preparation goes into the creation of a haunt? Now, I know a lot of us who have been to haunts before or been to a scare attraction. you know, we look forward to the scares and things like that, but there's an awful lot of preparation and planning that goes into the creation of all that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, because the act of scaring somebody can be quite a simple thing.
Mhm.
But to set up a situation that allows you to do that can be more complicated. So what, and I'll start with you, because you have so much experience in putting together a hunt. What was that, how did you put together your first hunt? I mean, what were the kinds of things that went into it?
So for us, starting out in the backyard, it took a matter of, I believe, 7 days to set it up for a one-night run on Halloween. And I mean, we just started with basics, you know, just jumping out of hidden corners and, you know, having, you know, Jason with a machete come out from behind a sleeping bag that was hanging by a tree. So
Yeah.
basic stuff like that. And then as you progress and get more into high quality attractions, we're at the point, you know, where it takes a full year to prep and plan for
Yeah.
each attraction and year you set up for the season. And it's interesting because as you sit down to like draw up your plans for a specific room, you kind of have an idea of what your theme's gonna be, but then you need to first kind of like think about how you're gonna do the scare and then incorporate things in that room to help facilitate.
Sure.
So for
Sure.
instance, if you have, say a morgue or something, and you might think, oh, it'd be cool if somebody popped out of one of the areas where they store the bodies or something. So you're gonna set that up, and then around the room you might place a gurney or something with some tools to help kind of guide people into that direction and have them jump out near their legs or mid-torso. And that's the other thing is, you know, finding different routes to scare people, elevations and sounds and stuff like that. So
It's almost like a science, you know, it really
It
is.
is-
It's
it
almost
is
like
a
a science where you're taking human behavior and you're trying to get a specific reaction, so you have a certain formula, like you're talking about things at different heights,
Oh, yeah. And
timing.
music is a big part. I mean, just look at
Yeah.
horror films and that build-up. And in your attraction, you know, you could have your music help you by having something low lane, like a soundtrack just kind of there, a simple
Yeah.
noise, and then have it spike
Right.
and help facilitate that scare.
A good example of that is, you know, John Carpenter's Halloween,
Yep.
which is a movie. I realize it's not a haunt, but that movie was shown without the soundtrack and nobody thought it was scary.
Oh, yeah.
And then they added the soundtrack and everybody thought that was one of the greatest suspenseful films that they'd ever seen. So that's how big a factor music can play.
No, absolutely.
Jay, I'm going to ask you the same kind of question, and I don't know how much involvement you had, but as a person who had participated in like a theme park scare attraction, how much work goes into that kind of a scare?
Years for them. There are designers that are working year-round on ideas for scare zones and houses that aren't to be seen this Halloween Horror Nights. They end up getting seen 3 years from now.
Wow.
And
So almost like planning a film.
well,
where you have
but things get in the way. So it's things like, okay, so the very first year Universal Orlando had The Walking Dead, that was not planned to be there that year. All of the scare zones and the houses were already planned a few years before that. But then the opportunity arises, so some things get pushed. So, for instance, one of the things that you end up doing, I'm giving away a big secret, and any of Universal finds this, I'm gonna get yelled at. I love it.
Do you have
So-
a non-disclosure agreement?
No, it's been a long enough time. Let them find me. At the end of your summer shift, when you've done all the big pyrotechnics and special effects for all the fireworks and everything, there's no work to be had at Universal for pyro and special effects until you get to Halloween Horror Nights. So you're lucky if you get called out to the warehouse. The warehouse is a few miles away, and that's where the HHN designers see you when you walk in the door and go, you're going over there, you're going over there, and they start pulling people, because now they're going through their warehouse, pulling out items that they don't ever need again to be tossed, that are not to be gone through the trash. You are not to get anything out of a dumpster, except the dumpster at the end of the row has no camera on it, and the building gets locked up at 7.
Oh my gosh.
That's how they told us. They were like, you are not taking anything home. But that last dumpster doesn't have a camera on it, and it gets locked up at 7, so people might not see what you take. But we were tossing hundreds of thousands of dollars of latex out because they knew they were never going to need these masks again,
Yeah.
because they were part of a scare zone that is now dated or will never be reused.
Yeah.
But then there are other times that they're like, hey, I know it's August and we have everything we need for October. We need to pull this stuff down because we're gonna use it in a house next October.
Right.
So they're already thinking ahead of time. There are designers that the designer that did the house, the Dracula house one year, he walked through the house, and as he was walking through, he was making notes on what to never do again. Because he was like, it's just not working.
So it's like a 365 a day.
Exactly.
job, preparation.
There are teams of people at the theme parks that are only there hired to think, build, and work on Halloween Horror Nights, and you will never know their names because
Yeah.
they are hidden away at warehouses. Yeah.
I want to ask, well, yeah, okay. I want to ask also about the scenarios. You were talking about, sitting down, actually making a sketch of what you wanted the house or the room to be in the house, and a plan. I would think it would be maybe a little bit different for you as a local haunt, because you with the theme park haunt, those scenarios are almost always dictated by what's in popular culture at that moment.
Yes
Right.
and no. For the houses, that very much takes precedence at houses.
Like a
If-
movie.
If Stranger
theme
Things
or-
is the biggest thing, that's the house. If Chucky's the biggest thing, that's the house. The scare zones, which is physically where I got to work more often,
Mhm.
the scare zones are things that are where they get to do their own original IP very easily. Fractured Fairy Tales was one of my favorites, where they had a designer that literally just went through and took every fairy tale creature and said, what if the fairy tales we knew were never good? What if they were never bright? What if they were always evil? And what if we were always supposed to take them as a warning? And
In
so,
other words, the true story of
yes,
fairy
exactly.
tales, right?
So getting
They're pretty
to
dark.
Actual grand.
work
Yeah.
there and see them and get to go, well, nobody thinks Goldilocks is a popular story right now, but one of the biggest things that scared people in that scare zone was the little gal that was playing Goldilocks and her 3 bears who were rabid. And
Wow.
there was chunks of flesh off of them, and they were just running everywhere. And the 3 people that were in bear costumes, they were going nuts because all of them had played IP characters in houses the year before,
Right.
and they were dictated on, I have to act like this version of the Wolfman.
Right,
I have to act like Chucky.
yeah.
This, they got to create their own character
Yeah,
along
yeah,
with the
that
costume.
would be right up your alley too.
That's where I like working.
Your dark alley.
Yeah, that's right where I like to be.
What is the most difficult thing about operating a local haunt, or like a theme park haunt? What do you consider the most difficult aspect of that, John?
Budget. That's the biggest thing. In your head, you're gonna have huge, grand, adventurous ideas, but there's still only so much you can afford to do and put up, so you're very limited to that. I mean, as much as in my head, I would love to, create, an area that is 5 full acres of nonstop walking and
Right.
full design sets and everything. It's like, it all depends on how much money you're willing to throw
Yeah.
down and what you can afford to do.
Yeah.
Take, for instance, Universal, they definitely have a larger budget in the theme park realm, so They can have a lot more fun, but
Sure.
but still, they're still cut off at a certain point.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
of course. Yeah.
They budget's not as big of a concern for Universal for a lot of it. I read a statistic that HHN in Hollywood makes them more money in that 1 month than the park does the rest of the year.
I just heard that
They could
yesterday
be
too.
closed
Funds their whole year.
That
and
to me
instead
is
just
mind-boggling.
Halloween Horror Nights, which
Yeah.
is part of the reason why we're gonna get a year-round horror hunt in Vegas.
Yeah.
Because they can see that that's the kind of thing they want. The biggest thing for Universal is guest and flow is what it's referred to, which is you design the scare zones to lead people to the haunted houses. You design the haunted houses to be grouped in such a way to lead them to the next scare zone, to keep them constantly engaged, so at no point can a guest get out of hand.
Right.
No guest can be bored or not enjoying themselves or take the time to go get too drunk to start messing up something because they're constantly in a state of fear movement. So you are trying to always make, and Orlando's got the bigger property, so they've got it much easier as far as how to spread out what scare zones to where to lead you. The fact that they even tell you that there are safe zones at Universal and in Orlando, that is bullshit. There is no safe zone in Universal Orlando during Halloween Horror Nights because you have to go through scare zones
To get to the safe zone.
a safe zone. There's no such thing. You're going through.
Yeah.
There are a couple of spots in Hollywood that I know are safe zones that you can get through. Like
Good maneuver through.
you go to a restaurant, you can go to the other side of the restaurant. Hey, you're safe. That's not the case at Universal because they want you moving nonstop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're running low on time, and I can't believe that.
Shit, I'm so
Actually, except
sorry.
we were the end of the show. So, but I do want to ask you, what's the strangest or weirdest thing that ever happened to you at a haunt? And Jay, you better tell your story. We'll let you go first because it'll be a tough act for John to follow.
Okay.
We almost punched him in that Christmas one.
So the very first year I worked Halloween Horror Nights, I knew I'd never been to a Halloween Horror Nights before as a guest. I grew up in a small town here, and so watching documentaries on stuff at Universal Orlando, which was the only spot that had Halloween Horror Nights when it started, was just, oh my God, one day I'm going to the horror mecca. And then there I was, very first time I'm sitting there. And my job was, I know it had a technical term. It was called street technician. I was a fog machine babysitter. And so I got to sit there in a corner with a headlamp on, reading a book, waiting for my walkie-talkie to go, hey, this fogger went out again. Okay, I gotta go. All right. And you interrupted my book. I'm going through the Dexter books. I want to read them. So I got to watch my characters really well, and that year there was a bunch of character actors that were very short, and they were all dressed as kids. This one gal was dressed in this little pink outfit with this little bunny mask, and she had a knife, and she'd run up and down the New York area of Universal Orlando and just tink, 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 tink across metal. She caused $9,000 worth of damage to the wrought iron fence of Universal, and they had to replace it. And they were pissed at her, but she won Character of the Year 3 years in a row. And this is the prime example why. She's coming through the fog, and she sees these two women walking like this. Very obviously drunk and tired. And she overhears them, because I can hear them, complaining about how it's not really scary. Nothing here was really scary. So she starts walking up behind them. And by walking up behind them, you're going to be my drunk lady. I mean, she is now this close.
A rolling was born.
Her other friend is right there also. And she's waiting, and she hears them say that, and then she leans in. Trick or treat. They jump. This one lands on the ground, and it's, Margaret! I done pissed myself!
Florida for you people.
To which she stands up, and she has flooded her jeans. Her friend, being the good friend that she is, then starts laughing so hard she falls over.
Florida for you.
The scarecrocker turned around, walked right back into the fog.
Wow. John, can you top that one?
I don't know about topping that. I mean,
I almost punched him. when
we're
he
kind of
scared
in the
me.
business of seeing strange things on a daily basis, working a haunt. I'll just say a few like funny things from people getting scared though, and one of my favorites is I was in my spot waiting for the people to come through, and they're in the room before, and I hear the scare happen, and then I just see a wall full on move, and I'm like still kind of sitting there going, okay, they must have just like kind of bumped in the wall. I'm still waiting, and still nobody. So then finally I go around the corner to see what happened, and the girl had got scared and she ran and dove, and her head went through the foam wall.
Oh my gosh.
So she was laying there with her head in the foam
Oh.
wall. So then Sally had to break character a little bit to help her get her head out of the wall and break her around and kind of help her move on, see if she was okay. But yeah, so.
Oh my God. Well, unfortunately, we have to bring Sinister Halloween Con to an end. And I'd just like to thank those of you who stuck around for this
Thank you.
last panel. Appreciate that.
I lost money because of you. I thought we were getting 0 people. You proved me wrong.
And I'd like to thank our 2 guests, Jaye and John, who are very dear friends. I have boundless energy to stay and do such a good job all week. So thank you guys. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.